Hey, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. What are your priorities? Where do you put your precious and limited resources and your time? And I ask this question because the way we choose to spend our time and our money really says so much about us. In this week's Torah reading, Parshat Balak, the non-Jewish prophet, Bilam, is commissioned by King Balak to curse the Jewish people. And essentially he does this because he's being paid. Bilam was this great prophetic personality, and he could have really used his talents and his gifts to better the world, but he basically sold it to the highest bidder. Balak was concerned that the Jewish people were getting too powerful, and a good curse from an effective prophet could do the trick. But what's interesting is that in the Torah elsewhere, it tells us that we're never permitted to accept a convert from the nations of Moab and Ammon. Why? Because the nations of Moab and Ammon never went out and allowed the Jewish people to pass through their property and never offered us food and drink when we were trying to make it through the wilderness. And as a result, to this day, we're not permitted to take any converts from those two nations, even though we don't really know who those nations are anymore. But in the days of the Bible, when we certainly did, we were not permitted to accept them as converts into Judaism. Why? Because they didn't offer us food and drink when we were trying to pass through. Now, maybe some suggest that they didn't offer the Jewish people, millions of people, food and drink as they couldn't afford it. It was just too much money to feed an entire nation. But when you see what King Balak of Moab was willing to spend to hire Bilam to curse the Jews, you see that he had the money. It's just a question of what was he going to do with it. He basically told Bilam, I'll sign a blank check. Whatever you need, however much money it's going to cost, we need you to curse the Jews. For that he had money, but not, of course, to feed a nation that had been enslaved, that all they wanted to do was pass through their territory. They didn't even let him pass through, let alone offer them food and drink. So to take away the Dubna Magid, one of the great Hasidic masters, teaches, you shouldn't think, oh, maybe they didn't have the money. That's why we have the story in this week's parsha of Balak paying a lot of money to Bilam to curse the Jews, to show he had the money. It's just a question, how do you spend it? We don't have endless funds. Do we give to charity enough? We don't have endless amounts of time and resources. How do we spend our precious time? How do we spend our precious money? Do we do it in a way to build other people up, or God forbid, just the opposite? That's the lesson. We have talents, we have gifts, we have resources, we have time, we have money. How do you use it? Shabbat Shalom.